creepiest things come to life. From eerie late-night visitors to unexplainable events, overnight shifts are often filled with more than just work. In this video, we're sharing spine-chilling stories from those who've experienced the strangest and most terrifying moments while working the graveyard shift. If you're ready for some late-night scares, stay tuned. You won't believe what happens when the clock strikes midnight. So, this happened about 7 years ago, but I still think about it every so often. Back then, I worked as a security guard, the type of security guard that travels around in the city to do these routine checks on objects. You know, making sure that doors, windows, gates, etc. are locked properly, that no people are on the property, check for fire hazards, attend SOS robbery alarms, and so on. There is this mall in the city, and per our contract, we did 2 security walks in the mall. The first one when the mall closed, where we basically emptied the mall for customers, locked doors, shy entrances, checking all the alarm systems. We end the first round by making sure the mall is empty of both customers and employees, check surveillance, and turning on all the alarms. The second walkthrough usually took place many hours after, in the middle of the night, where we made sure all the entrances is indeed locked, but also took another sweep inside to check for people and so on. This particular evening, the first security walkthrough went by without any issues, just the usual few customers taking forever to get out. The second walkthrough, however, something really weird happened. I started off by walking around the mall, making sure nothing is out of the ordinary and that everything is locked. I step inside and check the alarm monitoring, where everything is turned on. No error codes or logs of people being inside after I left the mall my first time for the shift. I go to the top floor and work myself down each floor. Everything is looking good. Eventually, I end up in the cellar floor, which consists of this toy store on one side, and opposite to the store is this huge playroom. Both the playroom and toy store have this see-through glass wall separating them from the hallway in the middle. Anyways, I got down there and did my usual walkthrough of the cellar. The toy store had this sticker on the door saying something about collectibles 50% off or something. I walk up to the glass door and shine my flashlight towards the collectibles section. As I'm focusing on the collectibles, I hear this sudden loud scream behind me. And I mean really loud, like I wanted to cover my ears. The scream sounded like a little girl, and it screamed, "Mommy!" Zrenya, but with a sort of rasp and desperate tone to it. Like a death scream, if that's a way to describe it. I quickly turn around, freeze in place while shining my mag light in the hallway and into the playroom. I just stood there for a solid 10 to 15 seconds trying to see who screamed. After collecting myself, I immediately think that somehow a little girl must have been left in the playroom when the mall closed. So I run into the playroom and start looking through all the toys, plushies, but no girl was found. I then double-check every little surface in the cellar, but no one was there. I began to think that my colleague, who ended his shift many hours ago, is playing a prank on me, so I go back upstairs to the alarm, to surveillance monitoring, but again there's no logs of anyone but me entering different zones, using the key card. I then check the surveillance, and no one was there but me and on all the cameras. I also started to chuckle at myself as I thought I looked like a coward when it happened. I settled my mind to it being some sort of doll in the toy store with a broken voice box or something, but weird that the scream came from behind me from the hall or playroom. I leave. I visit the store the next day and ask about the doll that screams, but they didn't have any dolls with any kind of voice box. They also tidy up and clean the playroom every morning, and if they find toys left behind that they themselves do not own, they make a list and put it in a storage box. No dolls whatsoever. I also ask if they have baby monitors for sale, but they did not. I'm very skeptical by nature and absolutely do not believe in ghosts, and will always find a natural, logical, non-supernatural explanation when stuff like that happens. But what happened during that night shift, I just can't explain. Once I worked for an ambulance company, and we were leaving St. Bernardine's Hospital in the city of San Bernardino around 2 a.m. Traveling northbound on Waterman, we had just crossed over Highland, passing the cemetery north of the hospital, when I noticed someone crossing the street ahead of me in the dark, making their way toward the cemetery. My partner voices over at me, "Look out, someone is crossing." I acknowledged seeing the person, but as our headlights got closer to this individual, they vanished into thin air. Being the driver, I came to a complete stop in the middle of Waterman and looked over at my partner. "You saw that, right?" And he goes, "Yeah, that's why I tried telling you to slow down." I turned the ambulance floodlights onto the left, homes, and to the right, cemetery, but nobody to be seen. We just shrugged it off and left. Either it was a ghost making his way back to its grave or a homeless man. My dad used to work at the old Harris department store in San Bernardino. Yeah, he saw some crazy stuff. The story that sticks out the most was the ghost of a child in the toy department. He was usually the manager on the night shift, the one who closes the store for the night. He would walk through all the departments making sure everything was in order for opening the next day. This one particular night, he had made his rounds and everything was in order. As he was getting ready to go through the last door and leave for the night, he heard a child laughing and running. He contacted the night guard. They used to have a guard inside all night in the 80s. My father asked the guard if anyone was still in the building, and of course the guard said no, but they still had to check. As they went through the building, no child could be found. As they came out of the second-floor elevator, they heard the child laugh again, followed by footsteps. They headed in the direction of the sounds. The laughing continued until they turned the corner to the toy aisle. Toys that had once been on the shelves were now all over the floor of the aisle. They no longer heard the child. Still, they searched the store for the child they knew was in there, but there was none to be found. After an hour or two of searching, the police were called and a report was made. The police also helped search, but no child was found. So my father went home for the night. The guard was left alone to do his duty. The next day when my father came into work, he sat down with an older gentleman who was also a manager. He had worked at the store longer than my father. My father relayed the events from the night before. The old manager cracked a little smile, then told my father of an incident that happened in the store many years before. Apparently, a mother and child were on the second floor waiting for the elevator. The elevator doors opened, the mother and child stepped in. The mother pushed the button for the first floor and the doors began to close. As the doors were closing, the child darted back towards the toy aisle, which was near the elevator entrance. The mother jerked his arm to pull him back into the elevator. The closing doors caught the child and crushed him. This was before elevator doors had safety mechanisms. The elevator was originally installed in 1907. It was the first elevator in San Bernardino. From what I remember hearing, it was the head that got caught, but I'd have to ask my dad to tell me again. The security guard ended up quitting soon after. They could never keep guards for long. My father continued to work at the store, but left soon after Harris's was sold to Gottschalk's in 1998. I worked as a bookkeeper and shareholder in a business office. When I began, the books were a mess. I was spending a lot of time in the office very early in the morning, working through issues. I'm a morning person, so sometimes as early as 4 or 5 a.m. Usually no one else in the building. To set the scene, my office was at the very end of a 10,000 square foot, single-level space in a fairly new business plaza. Our unit had heavy fire doors bisecting the space and a backfire exit that opened onto a long, narrow walkway that ran the length of the back and wrapped around the building, ending in a sidewalk just outside my office window. There is a deep drop off next to walkway along the back of the building and a very tall fence at the end of the building. One morning I heard running footsteps, heavy like a guy, from inside at the front of the building. I hear one of the bisecting fire doors crash open and the back door open and slam shut. I ran to the back door and looked out, didn't see anyone. I ran back to the front and out to the parking lot. No one was there. This became a very regular occurrence. I would respond every time, but I was having thoughts. It always sounded exactly the same. One day it had snowed. Snow on the walkway, snow in the parking lot, footsteps running, fire door crashing open, back door open and slam. I run out to look. No footprints. Another morning, very early, another person was there when this happened, and they ran into my office to tell me. We had an interesting chat. He told me that he had previously heard footsteps and movement when he thought he was alone in the building. I asked him to keep it to himself. Not a rumor we want getting out. He thought maybe he wouldn't be coming in during off hours anymore. Flip forwards a few months, we get a security system installed, interior motion detection and remote monitoring. I start getting calls in the middle of the night from security that the back door alarmed. I meet the police. We walk through nothing. Out of pure frustration, the next time I hear the running footsteps, I yell out to knock it off, and it stopped, at least for me. One night I get a call from my assistant. She and her husband are at the office. She had just deactivated the alarm and entered the building. They hear running footsteps, the fire door crash open, the back door open and slam shut. Her husband takes off running to catch the person, only to find nothing. I had to walk her through the scenario. Alarm was set before you turned it off, right? Office has motion detectors, right? There was no one in the building. Don't call the police, set the alarm when you leave, and have a good night. Not long after, I left my position and sold my interest in the company. The company moved within the year. I wonder if the running man followed them.
Thanks for tuning in. Watch another video if you dare.